welcome to the show. I hope you're going to have a great time because we're going to discuss something that usually I don't talk about, which is my personal experience. Did you notice? I usually tend to avoid talking about lived experiences, but there are other people on the internet that's the only thing they talk about. So I try to avoid it because subjectivity is very important. Like, for example, when I was a kid, my parents would tell me to go to bed at 9 p.m. And I found that to be incredibly oppressive. And I used to cry and I used to complain. But it taught me discipline and it actually helped me at school. There were other students that didn't have their parents telling them to go to bed at 9 p.m. They would stay up late watching cartoons. And the next day they were very tired at school. They would take bad grades. So, in other words, I personally felt oppressed. Was it justifiable that I would complain? No, because I was a kid. And the method of teaching that my parents gave to me was the method of teaching that my grandparents gave to my parents. And if it worked for my grandmother, it certainly worked for me. I think I shouldn't complain about the household I grew up in with rules and regulations that at the time didn't make sense. And obviously, it's very difficult to tell which rules and regulations were good, which ones were useless. But what I do know is that my education worked. So I managed to be where I am thanks for the effort of my two parents. But what I want to say is that lived experiences aren't very important because you can identify something with your subjective interpretation, and it might not be the case. Look, let me give you a perfect example of what I mean. So in Romania, there is this comedian on a very popular station, and he got a fine a couple of years ago because he was speeding, and in a low visibility curve, he overtook a car. Now, that is illegal, right? So he went on the roadside of the road with speeding, overtaking someone, didn't see what's coming from the front. So he took a fine, and he goes on and he goes in a rant and says that the only reason that the cop stopped him is because he's a famous person. So that is his lived experience. He felt that he was persecuted because he is a famous person and because he goes on the radio and he's got different political takes. That's why the cops hate him. Couple of weeks after, he does the same thing, but this time he actually hits a car and kills an entire family in a very devastating car crash. And was his lived experience that he was punished and he was being oppressed justified? Absolutely not. He broke the law. The law was there, even though he didn't hurt anyone the first time he overtook another truck in a low visibility curve. He didn't hurt anyone. It was a victimless crime, and he was pointing out how he shouldn't have been punished. But it turns out that victimless crime was there for a reason. It was to dissuade people from driving recklessly. So, very interesting. And by the way, like, that person is a huge moral busybody. He took an absence for a couple of years from appearing at the television, and when things died out, when the scandal died out, he came back. Very interesting, right? He's a comedian, murdered people. I don't know what the fuck is funny about that. I don't know how you can be funny after such an event. Like an entire family, because he had an expensive car with a lot more safety, and it was a 4x4 that he was driving. The other people were driving a cheaper car, didn't have the model. And now he's on television and he's lecturing people about wearing masks, saving lives. I'm not saying you shouldn't, okay? By all means, be the moral busybody you are meant to be, but I don't think that guy should have the moral high ground. So this is what I'm trying to say about lived experiences. It is very subjective. Like, most people will think that anything bad happening to them is because there's an injustice, they're being oppressed. So I rather go to polls, statistics, analytics, objectivity. I mean, obviously you can't be 100% objective, but as much as possible try to move away from quote-unquote lived experiences and emotions, because every person is going to view things differently. What was the comedian's name? Huidu. 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 Very popular comedian in Romania. And he used to have a segment where he would make fun of other people in the media. So, yeah. Was it speeding? Yes, he was speeding, number one. Number two, it was a low visibility curve. And number two, he overtook a truck during a low visibility curve. Now, I don't know how the law is in other nations, but here it's illegal to do that. If it's a low visibility curve, you're not allowed to overtake any other cars because you can't see what's coming from the front. It's common sense. So he actually went onto a straight line. You're not allowed to, with the car, you're not allowed to cross the straight line. And that's what he did. So he actually broke like several traffic laws. And he felt that he was being oppressed because he's a celebrity. Right. What was I going to talk about? Right. So it's illegal pretty much anywhere. Yeah, I mean, you got countries that have different rules. Like, for example, in some countries you're allowed to park on the sidewalk. On other countries you're not. But usually, like, there are some rules that are common sense everywhere. Like, you're not allowed to overtake someone if you don't see what's in front of you. Even if it's not a curve, like maybe you're climbing a hill and you don't see what's on the top of the hill. Like, you're really close to the top, so you can't see what's coming from the front. You shouldn't overtake someone. Just drive normally until you have visibility to perform the maneuver. He sounds like a total idiot. Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. And by the way, he got shamed a couple of months ago. He was in an airplane and started screaming at someone to put his mask on. And the guy was like, "You are the last person on earth that should be talking about public safety." And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, but what I did was an accident." And the guy said, it's like, "No, what you did was a reality." And then apparently there was like a deadly silence in the plane. Honestly, it is the people that have the most skeletons in the closet that are the highest moral busybodies. Is the people that do the worst, that think they have the right to moralize others. It's disgusting. It's what I'm seeing. I don't know, like, I have yet to see a moral busybody that is actually living the life even according to his own morals. Like, even according to the way he justifies other people should act. I mean, it can happen, but it's very rare. Even the vegan that's the most obnoxious sometimes stuffs his face with a burger. I don't know why. But, like, I know vegans. Okay, I'll tell you a vegan that you guys probably don't even know he's a vegan. Are you ready to blow your mind? Are you ready to have your mind blown with someone that's a vegan? You guys know him, but you don't know he's a vegan. Let me see if anyone in the chat thinks it's a YouTuber. Who do you think is a vegan out of the YouTube community? And you probably watched his videos. He also talks about politics. Alright? Very gloomy guy, though. He's the worst in everything, but he's a vegan. Let's see if the chat figures out who I'm talking about. Get the fuck out, Sargon, a vegan? The man probably likes his steak that barely touches the pan. Like a steak that's still virgin and only danced with the fire for a little bit. Okay, look, Boris knows. Yes, it's Black Pigeon Speaks. Black Pigeon Speaks is a vegan. But you don't know that. Why? Because he keeps it to himself. You know what? I bet Black Pigeon Speaks, like from what I spoke with him, and I don't see why he would lie. He never touches meat, ever. Like, he literally is the type of vegan that lives the lifestyle, never touched a burger, but he wouldn't tell you to be a vegan. Like, he wouldn't recommend that lifestyle to you. It's just something that he does for himself. Like, it's his convictions. So what I'm trying to say is that usually the people who live the life that they're supposed to are the less likely to be moral busybodies. The people who are the most obnoxious about it, the people who are like calling you a murderer if you ever ate meat, they probably eat meat as well. I mean, there were so many vegans on YouTube that were exposed for having eaten meat. And like they had entire channels dedicated around promoting veganism. And it's not about veganism, okay? It's just an example. But it's usually like the type of ideology that people preach the most, they don't live the life like that. And the people who shut the fuck up, they actually live the life. Manticore knew that BPS is a vegan. I didn't know that BPS is a vegan. Alright. So anyway, let's Black Pigeon Speaks wants to actually live longer to enact more evil. Alright, let's talk about people who are woke. So, I think this definition, it's important to define what is woke, right? Because for some people, woke may mean a thing. For others, it may mean something different. It's kind of funny because the person in my life that's woke, and I love her very much, kind of looks exactly like this. I'm just going to point it out. But anyway, what I consider, like for the purpose of this video, the definition we're going to use is a person who cares about topics such as immigration, minorities, LGBT, and the environment while being obsessed with political correctness. So these are like the topics, the cornerstone in their life, okay? They don't care about the economy. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about crime rates. They don't care about safety. They don't care about... But they're hyper-focused, like incredibly focused. Like the most important things are these topics: the environment, immigration, minorities, and LGBT. Okay? So, I was thinking, like, for example, I care about the environment as well. I don't want to see trash in the streets. I don't want to see polluted air. I don't want to get sick. But I value more than the environment, for example, I value the economy because I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to end up having my parents going to the hospital and not being able to pay for the services, right? So I balance things usually with other aspects. It's not like, okay, well, do you want to have a clean environment? And it's like, it depends. Like, how are you promising to clean it? Like, what tactics do you want to do? Do you want nuclear energy? I'm all for it. I'll even pay you money. I'll pay you subsidies. Oh, do you want to raise taxes for everyone? No, not so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. But, like, maybe we can find the difference. Right? So, a person that's woke is just, like, 100% focused on these things. And I'm thinking, like, what type of person actually benefits from this? Like, what type of individual would literally have his life improved if they were woke? Because, for example, for me, okay, LGBT rights. I'm not LGBT. You know, if I'm a cynical person, I don't have that much empathy. I have the same amount of empathy for other people just like they have for me. Except I don't like to pretend, right? So, LGBT people are being oppressed. It's like, how much are they being oppressed? Are we talking about levels of Qatar? Then yeah, I would probably care. I would go out and protest. Are they being oppressed because the government doesn't respect their pronouns? It's like, okay, not my business, not my problem. Like, let someone else do activism for that. I'm more interested about the economy. That's how I'm thinking, okay? I'm a bigoted, evil person, I know. But who actually benefits from these things, right? So, I have a person in my family which grew up in a very poor and very, how should I say, impoverished city. High crime rate. I mean, the place was awful. She was a woman. She got assaulted on the street several times. Very dangerous to walk there at night. Cops wouldn't do anything, absolutely at all. I mean, the cops were corrupt and most of the crime was dominated by a couple of gangs. So she grew up in a very dangerous place. Her mother passed away. And she lived with her father, which I don't really know if he was abusive. But he wasn't a role model dad either. Alright, so there were a lot of scandals in Romania. An ass whooping would happen from time to time if you misbehaved. Like it was the culture that was being passed from the communists. We called it applying a correction. So this person really disliked the place where she grew up. I mean, and I completely understand it. I mean, just so you can understand the type of friends that she hanged around with. Like, there was a guy that was an actual Satanist. And turns out, recently, I saw him in the newspaper. He was working at a shawarma. And he actually went with a couple of friends to rob some other guy. And the guy actually came home during the robbing, got killed. And then that friend tackled the guy, murdered him, and after that he hanged himself before the cops could come. So I just want you to understand, like, it's a really shitty place to grow up in. There are many reasons why that city is poor. It's because during socialism there was a chemical plant that employed a lot of people. But after socialism, the plant shut down, so all of the people there are in abject poverty. They really can't find jobs. They can't find places to work. So it's a mess. Now, the USA had 94% tax rates during World War II. I know that. I actually talked about it in another. Okay, so what I want to say is that this person, okay, has absolutely no attachment to the place she grew up in. Like, she absolutely hates the place where she grew up in. She has not a lot of attachment to her family. And she doesn't really benefits at all from the country that she is in. Now, because we're in the European Union, she managed to travel abroad and is now working in another country. And I think she actually won the lottery in the United States and now wants to go to New York. So for such a person, right, who doesn't really have an attachment to any nation, they don't view nations as communities, as a place where you have people that are knowing each other and they're forming bonds and relationships and they're digging roots into the soil, as they say. They view nations more like a place where economic transactions happen. So, in other words, she went to a country, things got bad there, she went to another country to work, right? Because that's how the European Union works. Like, you can travel to, I don't know, the UK, you can go to London, things get a little bit bad there. Maybe there's some bad policies, truckers are striking or whatever, prices go up. Oh, you don't like it in London, you can go to France. And if you don't like it to France, oh, you can go to Italy. Like, you can hop around and you can have a life that way. Like, if you're not interested in raising kids, which she isn't, if you're not interested in getting attached to a place, and you don't know the people that are attached to that place, then you have absolutely no interest in nationalism. Like, in fact, nationalism would be a detriment to you because now you're going to be forced to stay in a particular country. And you're going to not be able to hop around. Right? So the vision of the people who are woke is that a nation is a place where economic transactions happen. And what I notice very interesting with people who are woke is that they're very loyal to brands and corporations, but they're not loyal to countries. And I found this to be a little bit mind-baffling in a way. So, for example, like recently AT&T was exposed for trying to push anti-racist policies and telling people that the cops are evil and America is racist, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting that AT&T doesn't tell their own employees that the person in charge of AT&T is white and is a racist and all that shit, right? Like, you won't see Coca-Cola lecturing its employees about the harm Coca-Cola did in the past, about how Coca-Cola used to ship the products to Nazi Germany, about how Coca-Cola has made people in the third world suffer and dumped chemicals in the water. You won't see companies lecturing people about that. You won't see them telling their employees about how evil Coca-Cola was, but you can see them telling how bad America is, right? So very fascinating, because now you have all of the ideology that's supposed to... I guess the reason people should be loyal to a nation is so that in the case of a war, heaven forbid, you need the person to actually go out and defend the nation. But I really hope we're never going to experience a conflict, because I'm really curious who's actually going to defend it. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, now you have loyalty move towards multi-billion-dollar corporations away from communities, right? So people are less likely to show loyalty to the place where they grew up. They're less likely to show loyalty to the countries they're in, but they're highly likely to show loyalty to Apple. They're highly likely to show loyalty to other companies. I find it fascinating. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that it makes sense if you're a person that just hops from country to country to country to be for open borders. If Biden, for example, tries to push for a legislation to give $500,000 to immigrants who have been separated during the Trump administration, like, it makes sense that you're for that. It makes sense that you're for countries giving citizenship, because citizenship gives you perks for people who, for example, if Biden would want to give a bigger lottery for people to get citizenship, right? Like, you'd be in favor of that. If it would be about giving citizenship to people who have stayed in America for more than 10 years, you'd be in favor of that. Because you benefit from it, right? Like, you legitimately benefit from it. I, for example, a person who just wants to have a family and have a kid, don't benefit from that shit. I don't, the idea that, okay, the national GDP is growing, fuck the national GDP. If it's not in my pocket, then I don't give a shit. Okay, the national GDP is growing and I get taxed more. How the fuck am I benefiting from that? Why would I want that? The thing that really annoys me is when they say, oh, we can tax the rich. Okay, you tax the rich. Perfect. You tax, I don't know, Tesco. Or you tax Walmart. And what Walmart does is it raises the prices. And then when I go shopping, I still pay the taxes of Walmart. Along with everyone else that shops. So the living conditions go up. Why would I be in favor of that? I genuinely don't understand. Like, how is it benefiting me? How is it benefiting my friends and my close family if Walmart becomes more expensive? If they put the gas price and now driving a car is more expensive, and on top of that, everything else is more expensive because products need to be shipped via trucks. So this is like the mindset of the two different philosophies, I guess. The person who travels a lot, like the person who just looks at a place, a nation, and is like, okay, I just want to make money. And they view nations as a place where economic transactions happen, versus a person that wants to settle down and start a family. Like, you're not going to be able to find common ground because the personal interests are so different. Are you coming out for flat tax, small government, and deregulation? I was always for flat tax, small government, and deregulation. Don't come out with anti-free trade stuff. Usually, like, when you have barriers for free trade, it's detrimental. I mean, look, I'm not an ANCAP, okay? So I don't think you should have 0% tax. But I'm also not a socialist, so I don't think you should have 90% tax either. I think a middle ground should be found. Now, usually when you talk about free trade, right? Yes, it's good for companies not to have much regulations when it comes to trade. But at the same time, it's not good when you have a nation like Taiwan, which produces 90% of the chips in the world. So I would prefer if my government, for example, would, well, not my government, but the European Union would incentivize companies to produce factories in other places besides China. Or, well, besides Taiwan, number one. I said besides China, and it's 2021. It's not 2022 yet. They haven't invaded. But what I'm trying to say is that it would be good if you don't have all the eggs in one basket, because this is what ended up happening. Because of so many regulations, most companies moved to China, where even if they may have the same regulations, they don't apply the rules equally. So as long as you're following the Communist Party and you're doing what you're told, they're willing to look the other way. So you can be a company that produces stuff, you move to China, and then you can pollute as much as you want, you can pay below minimum wage, you can oppress people, and as long as you're buddies with the Communist Party, they will let you do that. And then you can just sell the products back in the West. So I don't like that. Like, I don't think that's a good thing, because we noticed with the pandemic, everyone was freaking out. It's like, oh my God, all the masks, they're manufactured in China. All the tests, they're manufactured in China. Everything is manufactured there. It's like, yeah, because you stop caring about these issues. Like, you look at it and you placed all your eggs in one basket, and if that basket falls down and it breaks, then you have no more eggs. How is that not a planned economy? Well, because a planned economy would just be... So under socialism, you would just be told, like, no, you need to build a factory here, period. But what I'm saying is that you should be incentivized. Like, hey, if you build a factory here, you're going to get some tax cuts. Or you can have a government grant if you build a factory here. So it's a middle ground. It's not planned economy, but it's not 100% free either. And by the way, all economies in the world right now are mixed economies, except for dictatorships, of course, like except for North Korea. But I don't think you have many nations that are 100% capitalist. I don't think you can have an actual free economy anywhere in the world right now. Like in every country, you're going to have regulations and things like that. For example, if it was actually a free market and you didn't have like carbon tax and you didn't have minimum wage and you didn't have working hours, most companies would probably not be in China right now. Like most companies would probably be in Europe. But they go to China because of the regulations in Europe. So in order to make money, they actually go to a place where there's less regulations, they build the product there and they ship it back here. So either the EU would drop all regulations, which is not gonna happen, or the EU can incentivize some companies to open factories in other places. Do I think there will be a second migration wave to the EU? Probably not, because I have noticed, especially in France, what was it? Like there was a very scary article that the left was saying. So, let me see if I can find it. Look at this, right? So this is from France 24. Apparently, 8 in 10 French people believe a conspiracy theory. So 8 in 10 people believe in the assassination of JF Kennedy, blah, blah, blah. All right. Nearly half of the population in France believe that the replacement theory is a thing. Now, I wanna point out that this is despite the mass censorship. This is despite the fact that the media try to avoid talking about this as much as possible, right? So you end up with 50% of French people believing. Now, just because they believe it doesn't mean what you think it means. Like some can believe it and think it's a good thing. Some can believe it and not care about it. And then there are, of course, the ones that believe it and they think it's a bad thing. But what I want to say is that this is exactly like pressing a spring. Like censorship existed, it pressed on the spring, but eventually the spring is going to bounce back up because by censoring people, you're not convincing them of anything. Like you're not convincing people that their ideas are wrong. You're not explaining to them. You're just enforcing tyranny onto people. So basically the far right is now rising in polls in France massively. So I don't think they're going to have another immigration wave when the previous one is already upsetting the elites and is already changing the status quo. It would be very interesting if we're going to see in 4 or 8 years an actual Eurosceptic European Union. Like you're going to have people in the European Union that are like the UKIP from the UK. You know, they actually get voted from their own countries, and then you have Eurosceptics in charge of the EU. I actually think that might be a possibility. I don't know how sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it 4 or 8 years from now. Macron should use tax funds to bankroll mass access to Destiny content. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I seen Destiny recently. He was pointing out that there is a female stalker that's after him. And he was saying that if he was a guy, he was saying that if he was a woman and the stalker was a guy, people would take him seriously. And I found that to be a little bit hilarious. I had stalkers myself. Like, here's the problem with online stalkers. Most men, like overwhelmingly amount of teenage men, are struggling to even get the attention of a woman. Like they don't even know how to get the attention of milady. They can't even get a date, right? So when they hear about the man that's being harassed by a woman, they never take it seriously because they're like, how is that guy so lucky? I mean, I can't even get a woman to look at me and this guy has a woman harassing him? Like, why can't I be him? So that's why people don't take it seriously. Because they can't put themselves into the shoes of the person. But in reality, there's a lot of men that are being harassed by women. Football players, athletes, anyone that's famous, musicians, rock stars, like all these people that are famous eventually might have a female harasser. I mean, I'm a small YouTuber, and even I had to block a couple of ladies. I'm not kidding, they were very annoying. You know, like, there was even this lady that gave me money on Patreon, and this was a couple of years ago. And when I'm going to tell you this story, you're probably going to think it's dumb or not, or I'm making it up. But, you know, feel free to believe me or not, but she was giving me money on Patreon, quite a big donation, and then she was requesting my personal information. She wanted to do web chat with me, like to actually show her my camera on Skype and whatnot. And she was just becoming very invasive. So I had to block her. Like, what else could I do? But what I'm saying is, like, I'm a small-time YouTuber. I'm not a famous person. I'm pretty much like a nobody, but if it happened to me, with the small amount of people that I have, can you imagine how it's like with Destiny? I mean, the guy has a lot more subscribers than I do. I think he's got like millions of subscribers. And it's quite possible that he's got plenty of stalkers, and this one just went over the board. So I kind of understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, I don't think it's Twitch's job to make sure that people don't harass each other. Like, you got a block button, you need to block. If the person becomes incredibly insistent, then what you can do is you can actually call the cops, get a restraining order. I don't think it's the corporation's job to morally police society. I'm not part of that interesting ideology. But anyway, right, let me see if I can show you something else regarding women harassing men, just in case you think that I'm talking out of my ass and you don't know if this is a thing or not. Give me just a second, because I saved it on Twitter. But if I can't find it, I'll just tell you what happened. Need to scroll down a little bit until I can find it. I think I'm getting close to it. Was an event which took place, and it was at a a music concert, and a woman goes up on stage and tries to hug the musician. And he pushes her away. Alright, here we go. I found it, right. So it's not just like men not understanding how it's like to be harassed by a woman, but it's also other women thinking that it's acceptable to harass other men. Why? Because women rarely get told no. Well, when they're at this age and are pretty, right? Anyone that actually told no to a woman, you're going to know that they don't really react in a nice way. The way they react, I would say, is the same way like a teenage guy reacts when he gets rejected the first time. It's like he just can't believe it. He just doesn't understand what happened. It's completely mind blown. You know, like when you're in high school, the first time you talk to a girl and the first time she rejects you, you just don't understand, like, why? Why are you reject? What's wrong? What did I do right? So this is how women that are more mature and they're at the age of over 20 react when a guy rejects them. They're mind blown. It's like, how did this happen? Like, why did it happen? So you have like this on TikTok. Okay, I can't play the music because copyright, right? But yeah, so he's singing and this chick comes up, goes next to him, hugs him, I guess, and yeah, he makes this expression like, what the fuck? Right? Leave me alone. And then you have this lady, and she says that
At one time, if I had seen that video first, I wouldn't have came.
So she says that if she would have seen this video, she would have gone to this concert. And I'm like, look, you pay money in order to watch a performance. You don't pay money to touch the performer. Like, what the fuck? Right? And she might say, well, yeah, but the guy was rude. He could have been more respectful to her. Like, no, you don't know just how many women do this to him. He's a famous person, okay? He's not your average Joe. He's not like the random guy. He has millions of followers. He probably has to deal with this in every single moment of his life when he's out Like people recognize him on the street. Hey, give me an autograph. Give me this, and that's okay. But there are people that get handsy, especially in a pandemic. Ooh. So this is the interesting change of dynamics I would get. Now you also need to take into account that even if you were to say, all right, well, he's a guy, like guys aren't like that. Guys don't get offended. Like guys always love feminine attention. What if he has a girlfriend? What if he has a wife? How do you think those women in his life might feel if they see that when he's at a concert, he's got fans that are getting grabby? Did you think about that? No, probably not. My ex went psycho and attacked me with a serrated carving knife. Jesus Christ, that's your fault. I will say this. If your ex attacked you with a serrated carving knife, that is your fault. You should be a better judge of character. You shouldn't go out with people that are crazy. I'm just saying. You should start reading people a little bit more because it's a very important life skill to have. Maybe you just made a mistake. Of course, yeah, she shouldn't attack you with the knife. I get it. But think about it this way. If you're such a poor judge of character and you allow a potential murderer into your home, people will take advantage of you when you do business deals. People will take advantage of you when you want to buy a new car. Your employer will take advantage of you when you go to work. So you need to start working on being a better judge of character so people stop taking advantage of you. And you disassociate from toxic people that, as you said, wanted to jump at you with a serrated knife. I haven't seen you on Netflix, actually. Didn't really have time. I got another super chat from Mentat. Sweden can never leave the European Union. Our politicians put it in our constitution that we're an EU member. Yeah, so if that's the case, you would have to change the constitution first, which is possible. But in order to leave the European Union, you probably need quite a big number of people that are politically active to want to leave anyway. So yeah, like for Sweden, it will be a little bit harder, but it wouldn't be impossible. So if you really want to leave the EU, you'd have to, I guess, get more people on board, explaining why it's a bad idea to leave. I read the super chat, man. That calm down, Jesus. Abdi Muhammad was technically raped. Yeah, so you find out that a lot of men, they actually happen to have been raped by women. But it's usually like I'm not talking like in the street, a woman pinning you down or something. Usually it's like an ex-girlfriend or someone like that, and they go to her place, and it's not really that she forces, but the same thing like women say, like they regret it after, or the woman just struggles and tries to pin him down playfully until she manages to do it. Like I had like 2 or 3 friends that told me that story, like different people, I mean. I was like, what, really? Like, get the fuck out. But it turns out like there's a lot of men who suffer from that shit, and I'm like, dude, like if you didn't want to, why did you go there? Is what I don't get. It's like, why did you go to your ex-girlfriend's apartment to begin with? Like, I don't know. I guess it's like different people using interesting arguments that just I can't comprehend. They don't fly into my brain. Like I would never go to a woman's house if I don't want to be intimate, especially if it's an ex-girlfriend or something. It's like, why can't you meet her outside? Why can't you go to the park? Like, why would you? Doesn't make sense. It's only possible to change the constitution when the leftist politicians want it. Yeah, but you gotta understand something, Bentat. Recently I had a revelation. I was like Muhammad who went into a cave, and I just saw the truth. You look at a society, right? Like, for example, in your society, and you see something that you think it's unfair. For example, maybe you see a law that bans your speech or bans a human right that you have. And you think like, wow, that is really unfair. And you blame the politicians. So, for example, on my main channel today, I talked about in the UK, they made a law where you can go to prison if you type things online that may likely cause psychological abuse to another person. So if you type bad messages online, you can go to prison in the UK, right? Now, you would think that this is because of left-wing politicians that want to have power. And in a way, it's true. But in another way, you also need to understand the reason that law exists is because there are people in society, quite a few of them, who want that law to exist. Like, there are people who look at that law and they say, like Kelly Miller, for example, and she says, that is an excellent rule. Like, that is such a great law. I am glad that I live in a country where that law exists. So it's the same with Sweden, right? Like, you have in the constitution that Sweden belongs to the EU. There are probably quite a few Swedes that are very happy that they're in the EU. So it's not just the politician, but it's the fact that you have people in your country that are highly supportive of the European Union, and that is why you have that in the constitution. Usually politicians will not pass something that they know that more than 70% of people don't want. Like, it's very rarely that is happening. Even when you look at taxes, like you have a politician that raises taxes or whatnot, there are people who want those taxes to be raised. So I can't think of many examples where you have a rule in a country where most people don't support it. Even Australia right now, which is becoming incredibly tyrannical in many ways, you have people that actively support the current prime minister. Like, you look at polling, you look at many things, even online, like, you can find these people and they actively support all the measures that Australia is doing. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the mentality that, okay, you have a politician that's a tyrant, like an evil king or something. Sure, like, politicians can cheat and they can lie and they can manipulate and they can, try to get their way and they will propose something that gives them power and convince people that it's for their own interest. Like, I'm not saying that's not the case. But what I am saying is that when you have a law, it only exists because there are people who want to enforce it. Everyone loves the European Union. Well, Poland doesn't love the European Union right now. Apparently, the European Union told Poland that their constitution isn't more powerful than the laws in the European Union, which is quite different than how things work in the United States, right? Like, in the United States, you have the US Constitution, which dominates the laws of all the states. But besides the Constitution is the laws of the nation states, like Texas and Illinois and California, that prevail over the federal system. The EU is more like the Supreme Soviet. The EU is more like, the European Parliament laws dominate even your national constitution, according to Ursula von Leyen. The funny thing is, like, they chose to fuck with Poland, and I said this in the previous stream. Like, the Polish people preferred sucking cock from the Reich and sucking cock from the communists rather than to surrender. Like, it's one of the most stubborn population of the entire European Union. When it comes to the Poles, I don't know why you would really want to start a fight with them. And as I mentioned before, in international law, this has been true since the beginning of mankind and is going to be true until the last person dies. In international law, when you say something, the other person is always going to ask, you and what army? So, in other words, I don't know how Ursula von Leyen is going to convince the Poles to do anything, unless, like, what army is she going to use to convince the Poles? Like, the German army? If Germany invades Poland, that would be a little bit problematic, wouldn't it? So, what I'm saying is that not everyone loves the European Union. And even in the EU, there are conflicts of interest. Like, you have the V4 alliance, which is Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Bulgaria. Slovakia. Slovakia, not Czechoslovakia. So, Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and I believe Serbia. Hopefully I'm right. I always get the last one wrong. But yeah, so you have the V4 versus France and Germany. And now you have France, which might actually have a right-wing government that's right-wing socially, not economically. So very right-wing on cultural issues. It's going to be an interesting time in the European Union. Thank you, Eklek. I think my cat is pregnant again, this time with actual Bengals. So it's going to be interesting. Speaking of polls, where's the cat tree? It's in the other room, actually. Oh, look, I got checks. So I have a lady which is following me from the Czech Republic, and when I said Czechoslovakia, I triggered her so bad Like, she wrote pages after pages on Steam explaining to me why it's very problematic to say Czechoslovakia. But you gotta understand, I grew up with the television in Romania, and they would say Czechoslovakia nonstop. Like, they wouldn't say anything else besides Czechoslovakia this, Czechoslovakia that, so now it's in my brain. I understand the history of your people. I get the suffering, but you need to understand it's just like an atheist saying, God damn it. Like, I know God doesn't exist. I don't want him to damn it, but it's just like a figure of speech. I would gladly come on and talk about the Polish situation because it's really complex. I hate the government and hate the EU as well. Well, from what I understand about the Polish situation is that you have a court. I don't know if it's a Supreme Court or a court that just supervises if the laws are being applied correctly. But what I understand is that the Poles actually wanted to get rid of it anyway through a legislation that's going to come down the pipe. But when the EU freaked out about it, then the Poles now really love that court. Now every single Polish person is tying themselves like a hippie to a tree to that court. And they love it as much as they love the Polish flag. So you have that happening. Now, the European Union, for some reason, didn't go after Germany when one of their courts said the same thing. Like, one of the German courts said, no, like, German constitutional law is more powerful than European law. Like, the EU overlooked that for some reason. And they decide to go after Poland. So, my take is that the worst enemy of the EU right now is the EU itself. Like, they are keep giving themselves own goals after own goals. Instead of just finding something else that's more productive. Don't let her have too many kittens too close. Spay her. What do you mean spay a fucking... It's a Bengal cat. It's a cat breed. Alright? I'm actually thinking maybe opening a cattery or something. I just want to see how difficult it is to do. And if it actually works, I might open a cattery. And then I would use the money to pay for my house's mortgage. Spay the Bengal. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with people? Spay the Bengal. My God. Spay the Bengal. What do you think about woke Hollywood pushing social justice agenda and diversity into European folklore like Netflix and Witcher? Eastern European people absolutely hate it. From what I can see, most people around here, they either prefer watching old movies, like my parents, for example. They don't even touch Netflix. They watch Hallmark. It's a cable channel that shows old movies. So most people, they prefer that. The ones that even go see the movies, like, they just don't like them. They don't know about woke stuff or anything like that. Like, most Romanians don't even know American politics. But they will go to a movie and say, yeah, I didn't like it. I just didn't. So either they watch Korean films, which is probably why Squid Games was very popular. Or if they don't watch Korean films, they watch anime, manga. But overwhelmingly, I don't see many people like Hollywood anymore. I don't see people talking about movies like they used to. Thank you, Rusta. But yeah, no, like, my girlfriend was really, my wife actually, she was really baffled by this. She would watch Netflix, and there was like a historian thing that she liked, because she liked watching movies with queens and stuff. And there were black aristocrats, and she asked me, like, well, historically, were there black aristocrats? Because I thought, like, the British actually invaded Africa, and, like, how does that make sense? And I said, no, it's just like the fact that the producers of the show don't want to be viewed as racist, so they have to add black people there in order to prove they're not racist. And she goes like, wow, that's fucking retarded. And I'm like, well, you know, what can you do? Like, otherwise people would assume they're racist if they don't do that. And she's like, well, yeah, but, like, it breaks the immersion. And I'm like, yeah, sure, but, like, what is more important, you being immersed or them not being viewed as racist? Take your pick. So that is one of the things. Another thing that she asked is, like, how many gay people are in America? And by the way, like, unironically, like, these are questions that my wife is asking. She doesn't speak English very well. She doesn't know American politics. She just watched Netflix. And she asked me, like, how many gay people are in America? And I'm, like, a little bit taken aback. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what is that question? It's like, well, because there's just so many gay people on TV. Like, just... Like, I literally had, like, my Pepsi, like, burst through my nostrils when I heard that. Because, like, she's like, well, you know, I watch Korean movies, and I watch other movies, and I watch Bollywood, and there's no gay people there, or if there are, they're a couple, but every single show in America has gay people. Like, what is going on? And I'm like, yes, Americans, yeah, they're a little bit more progressive, and they're becoming gay. Honestly, like, Kelly, how would you explain that? I'm really curious. You know, Kelly is a left-leaning person. Like, how would you explain that? You got your husband coming up to you. He's innocent. Let's say you married an Indian husband. He's Hindi. Right? He just came to the UK. Doesn't know anything about British culture. Nothing at all. And asks you, like, why are there so many gay people on TV? Like, it's a little bit weird. Well, what would you ask him? What would you tell to him? Gay people are 2% in the US. Oh no, because if you, like I'm telling you, if you add all of the ones that you have on Netflix and in movies and in TV shows, it will probably go to 5%. I mean, what is fascinating though, and this is actually interesting, you can make this game. Name me a TV show that doesn't have gay people in it and came after 2016, and I would have to name you a blockbuster movie from Hollywood that has gay people in it. And the answer is that all TV shows have them, with very few exceptions, and almost no blockbuster movie has them, with very few exceptions. Why? Because blockbuster movies are being sold in China. And it's literally sometimes the same people that make the TV shows and the movies, showing that they're major hypocrites. You feel bad for that Indian man? Why do you feel bad for that Indian man? I'm pretty sure Kelly Miller can provide him a stable home with lots of love and affection. But honestly, like sometimes, you know, getting questions from my wife that come out of the blue, they take me by surprise. It's like a sneak attack. Hold on, I got another super chat from Mentat. The European Union is the Holy Roman Empire 2.0. You know what? I should read more on the Holy Roman Empire because, honest to God, I'm absolutely clueless about it. The only thing I know about the Holy Roman Empire is that it wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, and it wasn't an empire. That is the only thing that I know. You would tell your wife that it was gay conversion therapy? Well, how would that work? It doesn't make sense. I mean, if I were to look at TV shows that shows Muslims in it, right? Like, if I were to watch Arabian TV shows and Arabian television, and I see Muslims everywhere, that's not going to make me a Muslim, is it? It's just like, okay, is their culture, is their thing? It doesn't necessarily make you want to reproduce that. Unholy European Empire, that's actually funny. Play some Crusader Kings 2. I played Crusader Kings free, but I really don't like grand strategy games. I like games where you have a clear goal, and it's a test of wit. Like, you actually have to win, and there's a clear objective. I don't like that in Crusader Kings, like, the only way to win is to paint the map your color. I find that to be a little bit boring. What is HRE? Yeah, but I don't think you can make people gay, Abdi Muhammad. Like, no, seriously, let's put it this way, right? Do you want $1 million, Abdi? The answer is probably yes, okay? Would you suck cock for it if it wasn't a sin? Okay, I'm an atheist, and I don't know, like $1 million. But my point is, you can't be gay. Even if someone were to convince you to do it, like even if someone gave you $1 million and you did it, you probably wouldn't like it. So being gay is definitely not a choice, in my opinion. Like, you can't choose. Although, you're not born that way either. And how do we know? You have genetically identical twins, and there were experiments done on it, where they have the exact same genetics, they raise themselves in the same household, One of them ends up gay, one of them ends up straight. So, maybe it's like, okay, don't compare with the illness, but I'm just saying, if you look at diabetes, type 2 diabetes, you have a predisposition for it, like you have the genetical predisposition, but you also have the environmental factor where if you consume too much sugar, you can actually become diabetic. So there are people who can consume as much sugar as they want, but because they don't have the predisposition for diabetes, they won't get it. And then you have other people who have the predisposition, but they don't eat sugar, so they don't get it. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe there's a gene that gives you a predisposition to this, to some people. And if they're exposed to certain stimuli, I have no idea. I don't know the research. But what I do know is that it's not a choice. Like I, for example, now can't will myself into being gay. And it's also not something that people are born with because you have genetically identical twins. One of them is gay, one of them isn't. The joke flew right over my head. Dude, I'm not funny. I'm actually trying to have an honest philosophical conversation here. What are you doing? Want to make people gay. Okay. Let's see. What else can we have? By the way, this is one of the reasons I think Kelly Miller will love this. Why you have people that are single in the age of the internet, right? Like it's such a simple picture, but it says so much. Like very rarely a picture is actually worth 1,000 words, right? And it's about what people want to find in life. So these are the parents, and this is what it meant for them to be compatible with each other, right? Like it was very simple. Like they didn't have that many preferences when it came about finding their half. So that they had like a just very small preferences, right? And then you have the child, and these are the preferences of the modern day youth when it comes to finding a significant other. It's so complicated. It's like, okay, well, I want him to be a man, and he needs to be 7 foot, and he needs to have a car, and he needs to have a house, and he needs to have a job, and he needs to be pretty, and he needs to be charismatic, and he needs to be intelligent, and he needs to love the animals, and he needs to love the children, and right? So these are like the preferences. And then you have these people ending up being alone, and they don't know why. And it's kind of funny because if you look at polls and statistics and studies, what studies say, what experts claim, it's actually the fact that women have these preferences. Like there are so many men that would be in a relationship with anything that has a pulse. But when you look at, and this tests were done on dating apps, when you look at women, oh my god, he's not 7 foot, oh, I'm not even interested. Oh, he doesn't have a car, ew. And in the common culture, it's, oh, well, men are reading comic books and they're seeing like pretty women on Instagram and TikTok and they have unrealistic expectations. Get the fuck out. Reality doesn't coincide with that. Like reality, women are the ones with unrealistic expectations. I think it was like, all the women, like 80% of the women like the top 5% of the men. And the thing is, like, there are Guardian articles where there's a woman and she says, I can't find a guy. And the article goes like, never lower your expectations, never change yourself. You will find the guy eventually. Like, imagine if you're a guy that looks at boobies and you have drool coming out of your mouth, right? So every time you see a woman, like I would look at Kelly Miller, I would see that she's got a bosom and I would have drool coming out of my mouth, right? No woman would be interested in me. Like that is the biggest turnoff that you can ever have to a woman. Being a creep, being a pervert is the worst turnoff. You have more luck finding a woman interested in you if you're a doormat and you have absolutely no self-esteem than if you're a creep. Just so you can understand, like being a creep is the worst thing ever, right? So imagine I would be a creep and I would write an article and I would say, you know what, maybe I need to change something about myself. Maybe there's just something that I am doing that convinces women not to like me. And then you would have other men saying, oh no, don't change anything about you. Like, you're perfect just the way you are. You need to find the person that's compatible with you. Like, eventually, you're going to find someone that will love you for exactly who you are. That is the most toxic advice you can give to a person. Never do that, all right? Like, always be your worst critic. If you're not going to criticize yourself, you're never going to improve. And if you think there's nothing to improve, then you think you're perfect. Are you perfect? Because I don't think anyone is perfect. Life advice from V Livestream. There we go. The chat boomer versus virgin millennial versus the wizard zoomer. Dudes are usually Google at meeting high expectations. I wish V could have seen you so I could make a joke about the main character. Dude, I don't have time. I need to work. I have mortgage to pay. Unlike you, I have a wife I need to take care of. I believe the pool spoke of a survey. The pool. I love how I call Mini Binny. The pool. The pool spoke of a survey in which all 4 generations were asked the percentage of LGBTQ people. US boomers said 5%. Xers 10. Millennials 15 to 20. Holy shit, Zoomers 33. Okay, so now I'll tell you something about television, alright? And I think I said this before. But the interesting thing about TV is that, yes, it can make you think certain things are false, but when you actually meet them in real life, you immediately change your mind based on reality. So, for example, and this is unironically, I thought that at least half the population in the US is black. I'm not kidding, okay? Like, 5 years ago, before talking to Americans, before anything like that, I thought that around half the American population is black. Why? Because I would watch Hollywood movies. And it was like everywhere there's a black person. So it's like, okay, if it's not half, maybe it's like 40, 30%. Turns out I was wrong. And the moment I found out I'm wrong, like someone showed me the census, I was like, okay. And that's it, right? So even though like watching television gave me a false representation of reality, I was like, okay, I'm wrong. Here's another example. When I was a kid, I watched a lot of movies that empowered women, the Hollywood way. So, Ripley from Alien, Xena, Warrior Princess, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, in my mind, it was that if a woman learns karate, she can take on any man, right? So, I go to the University of Law, and I managed to embarrass myself more so than I have ever did in my life. But there was this judge, and she was quite respectable, right? She was... I can't say like an older woman. She was probably in her 30s or something. And she was talking about how difficult her profession is because she actually had someone break into her house and murder her dog. And she's very afraid. She can't sleep at night because of that. And, that's what she was saying. And I asked her, it's like, why don't you learn karate? Like, why can't you defend yourself? Why? Because, like, I didn't see her as a woman. I saw her as an equal, right? So... it was, in my mind, if she learns karate, she can be like Xena Warrior Princess, because that's what I saw on TV. Now, everyone laughed at me, of course. People mocked me for several weeks for saying that. And then I realized, okay, real life, different than Xena Warrior Princess. So yes, like television can create a false image of how the world is. It can lie to you. But when you actually come into contact with how things really are, you just change your perspective. So, for example, in the case of millennials who think gay people make 15 to 20% of the US population, the moment they see the census, they're probably going to be like, okay, I was wrong, and that's it. But yeah, karate, because I watched Karate Kid, Kelly Miller. Did you not see how in Karate Kid, Miyagi-san managed to BTFO 10 people? I mean, if Miyagi-san, an old man, can BTFO 10 young people with karate, surely that judge can also use karate in order to defend herself. I don't see why you would think that's not the case. And that's why V never was allowed to practice law. Why? Because I told women to take karate lessons. Actually, I didn't tell her to take karate lessons. I was basically trying to say, it's like, why are you crying if you're not doing everything possible to improve your life? which is a very good observation, because that's how I live. Like when I have a problem, first I try to do everything in my power to fix the problem before I try to rely on others. Because when you rely on other people, you end up being disappointed. Usually, when you try to fix the problem, you may actually fix it. So I was actually asking her, it's like, okay, if you're afraid to sleep at night, why don't you learn karate? Like, raises your confidence, makes you sleep. You won't hear about LGBT after World War III and the crisis. Knock on wood that there's no World War III, alright? Like, I don't want to find out how that is when 90% of the chips in the world are being produced in Taiwan. Imagine World War II where 100% of the steam engines are being produced in Poland. It's a little bit concerning. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't know what would happen. Because I usually predicted, like, okay, the pandemic is going to cause a huge rise in nationalism. Why? Well, because now everyone understands that the supply chains are fucked up, and, you had the Democrats going around and saying you need to hug people, hug an Asian. If you believe that the virus is a problem, you're a racist. If you say the China virus, you're a racist. They were criticizing that people chose not to go to restaurants, right? So I was thinking, it's like, okay, they're going to get really fucked for saying these things. And secondly, a lot of people are going to want to be more nationalistic, at least in the economic sense. Like, let's have our own industry here. Let's manufacture shit as close to home as possible. And I was wrong, right? I was completely wrong. Apparently, everything is upside down than the way I thought. So, I'm not making any more predictions about culture when it comes to long term. Short term predictions, sure, but long term, never again. Taiwan is so cool. You love you some Taiwan? Okay, well, I love it too, which is why I hope that China isn't going to invade it. Nationalism is on the rise. Depends on the country. Like, some countries, yes, other countries, no. So, it's a little bit It's definitely not to the levels that I expect it to be. The pandemic made the VAC realize he has to leave Europe. I don't know, like, there are places in Europe where it's actually quite good. Eastern Europe, especially. But... what the hell? No, you will not call me. Right, so Eastern Europe, especially, but... what you can do, even if you're in a country that is very draconic... I mean, let's take Australia, right? You can still move to a rural area, which is pretty much what I did. Like, the moment that I was locked into my house for my own health and safety, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to see if I can get a mortgage and move to the countryside. Sure, I'm not going to have access to all of the cool things that I have in the city, but at least I have my own backyard, and I can walk around as much as I want. I don't give a shit. The government is never going to lock me in my house again. And yeah, that's pretty much what I did right now. There are measures that you're not allowed to go out, quarantine, bullshit. If I want, I can go on my private property, onto my yard. It's legal. They can't do anything about it. So even if you're in a country where you have a lot of draconic measures, you can still choose not to live in a city. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive because you have to commute. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult, but hey, you know, like, all the bad shit is happening in the city. Milo became gay after being abused. Yeah, I heard that might be something that's interesting. But I don't know any studies, so I don't know how common that is. Poles have always been clay hungry. Just look at what they did before World War II and in the 1920s. What does it mean, clay hungry? I don't know what clay hungry means. My wife's grandparents gave us an acre of land out in the country. Well, you know, like, this is another problem that I had. Like, when I decided to get this house, I had a lot of people that actually said they're going to help out, like family members, and they said, oh, I'll pitch you money. Oh, I'll give you shit. No one pitched in. No one gave me shit. I have the entire debt on my shoulders. And this is like why I guess I'm a right winger, because the more I live, my lived experiences, they all tell me that in life it's best to rely on yourself. Don't expect help from others. Don't expect other people to keep their promises. If people keep their promises, that's fine. Like that's great. But don't rely on them. Just rely on yourself and your own abilities. And if you live like this, I guarantee to you, you're going to have a better life than you expect other people to give a shit. Have you read the novel The Forever War by Joe Haldeman? Man, I don't have time to read. The only thing I'm trying to read now are 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, which is something that I would give to Kelly Miller as well. Good advice. Oh, clay equals land. Yeah, that's true. Now you owe them nothing. Well, see, that's what the World Economic Forum should have said. It's like you owe them nothing and you will be happy. Yes, when I will owe them nothing, I will be happy. That is true. The right is correct about community. Your attitude is more libertarian. Can you have non-lived experience? Yes, you can. I mean, for example, I can look at polling data. Or look, I'll give you a perfect example of non-lived experience. If I see that gay people on the internet, they say that their father disinherited them because they're gay, I can see why that's fucked up. I can see why that's bad. And, you know, like, I don't have to live that experience in order to know that it's not something cool. Cancer, a better example, right? So I don't need to have cancer to know that cancer is bad. So I can have the experience of seeing a cancer patient and understanding the difficulty that is going in, both emotional and physical. And it's not the lived experience. Like, I don't live it. I don't know how it is, but they tell me that it hurts and I believe them. So that is a non-lived experience. Kelly Miller believes that Jordan Peterson is far right. He's not far right, Kelly. He's actually trying to tell you how to be successful. Like, in the book, he is giving you the key to success. You just need to reach out and pick it up. I'll tell you why I read a little bit from Jordan Peterson. Because my wife, she wanted to read some psychology in her free time. Like, she wanted to improve herself. And she went and bought this bestseller from the New York Times magazine about stress. And it was like the most basic bitch shit being wrote in that book. Like, I could have wrote that book. But it was a best time seller, right? So I went and it's like, okay, fine, I'll buy you something. And I actually got her the 12 Rules for Life from Jordan Peterson. And she's reading it, she's enjoying it, she's like actually taking notes. And she's like, okay, wow, this can help me out at work. Like, this is actually a good thing. Like, I didn't know about this. Oh, wow, like this is actually true. Like, yeah, I seen this happening before. And that person was successful and I can do it. You know what I need to do now? I need to buy her Donald Trump Art of the Deal, right? Like, that is the next one that I need to get her. Arctic Fox. Here in the UK, all TV adverts feature black actors or something mixed-race couples. You would think the UK is 80% black. Instead, it's 87% white. Please explain to your wife in case she's confused. She doesn't see UK adverts, and all the adverts in Romania have white people. So we haven't reached that discussion yet. Please finish 12 rules. Changed my life after the first bad breakup. See, Kelly? See? Look at what Johnny is saying. It changed his life, Kelly. Like, you have lived experience right here. Poor people can't move. Here's some e-bag for you. That is not true, Donkey. That is not true. If you're a poor person, you're probably living on rent, and you can just try to get rent from outside the city. And it's probably cheaper. It's actually cheaper for a poor person to move. Unless they're so poor they don't have a car and it's very costly for them to commute. Okay. But even then, like, they could get a bike or something. Like, no. It's actually cheaper to live in a rural place than to live in a city. Now, there are other things, like, for example, Let's say in a city you can find an apartment, so it's cheaper to pay the rent because it's a one-room apartment, and it's cheaper to pay for the heating and whatnot. But if that's the case, just find a friend of yours, like someone that you really like and you get along with, and you can rent a house and you both share the price. So you can rent a two-room house in a rural place, and one of you gets a room, another a room, and you use the kitchen in common. So no, like you can. You can. There is no such thing as not possible. There's always the yes you can attitude. We are not evolved to derive all our calories from meat. We are evolved to run off sugar that is broken down. Why not both, Kelly? Like, if you look at the diet people used to have during the Roman time, because we actually have records of how people used to live all around the world throughout history. Usually people would eat vegetables 5 or 6 days a week, and they would eat meat only once a day. So that is probably the healthy diet to have. As much grass as possible with sugar, as you said, like fruits, vegetables, and you supplement that with meat once or twice a week. Fiber is super important. Yeah, like fiber actually doesn't get digested, but it's useful for digestion. So if you want to lose weight, you need to have a balanced diet, and fiber is super important. Jordan Peterson only eats meat. The reason Jordan Peterson only eats meat is because he is suffering from a medical condition. And there are several medical conditions where the doctor will prescribe meat to you. And yeah, I mean, if you're having a problem, like let's say you get constipated from the fiber because your body is different and you're having a medical issue with that, yeah, then there's nothing you can do. Like, you have to eat meat. Then it's the same like if you're having, I don't know, different medical conditions that make you eat more vegetables. So let's say, how do you say cholecystine in English? But yeah, if they remove your I don't know the English term for it. The thingy in the liver, which delivers the pancreatic fluids in the thingy. If they remove that, you might have to eat less meat. But preferably as little as possible. Or at least boil the meat. So like, if you have certain medical conditions, you can be put on weird diets. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, okay, a person with diabetes is going to have to eat less sugar. Now, you can't look at the person with diabetes and say that everyone in the world needs to live by his lifestyle. No, but like what is happening is that because of his medical condition, you know, he has no choice but not to eat sugar. You have no idea about Jordan Peterson. You know, he only eats meat. I saw it on a YouTube channel. He talked about it. Let me see. What the condition is. There's several digestive illnesses which actually has to, so meat only diet. See if I can find it. I think he talked about it on the Joe Rogan thing. I'll probably have to get prepared about it on the next stream. But still, like I was talking about his book, he never mentions this in his book, so I don't see why this is an important aspect. Why do you placate so much to this Kelly person? Because she's the only leftist that I have in the chat. Like, if you become a leftist, I'll placate to you. I promise you this. I also placated to Antifa Romania for the same reason. It's like, I have 219 people watching, only one is a leftist. So I'm really curious to know about the other side of the story. He has an immune situation that his daughter also has. Thank you, Donkey. I knew there is something to it. People with diabetes should avoid food with high insulin. He doesn't have diabetes, Kelly! I was just saying that there are people with certain health conditions, like diabetes, who doesn't take things that have high insulin and don't eat sugar. Okay, so if you have a medical condition, you can have a weird diet. Jordan Peterson has an immune condition, which is genetical, and because of that, a doctor prescribed to him meat-only diets. Talk with his doctor, jeez. How do you know it's a she? He's got an avatar of a woman. How? Ever been to Bulgaria? So the only other nation that I went to is the UK, and I took a plane to get there. So no, I haven't been to Bulgaria. I wouldn't go to Bulgaria because the culture is very similar to Romania. So if I were to travel, I would probably travel somewhere more, dare I say, exotic, like the United Kingdom. I'm too far left for VOC. Well, I don't know what to say, VOC. When I get accused of being far right by some people and far left by others, I guess I'm where I'm supposed to be. Kelly is probably a guy in real life. I see. What issues am I far left to you, VOC? Jesus, how right wing are you? I'm really curious. Like, are we talking economics or are we talking cultural? Leftists represent less than 0.5% of the population. Yeah, because a lot of people think that in a society you need to have 51% of the people so that something happens. In reality, a lot of people don't give a shit about politics. You know, the silent majority is not a player. They're the spoils of the victor. The far left and the far right are struggling to obtain the silent majority so they can abuse them. So the silent majority, every single time throughout human history, they have the rules imposed on them by the far left or the far right who win the culture war. Don't become short fat otaku. My god, I argue with short fat otaku on a lot of issues. But then we realize it's like, okay, we're actually entertainers. Like, we're not people in parliament. We're not making legislation. We're not changing the world. So VOC can't be more right-wing than Tactical Droid. What is this, a fucking competition? I think VOC left. He doesn't articulate any further on how exactly he is more right-wing than me. Yeah, he probably eats steaks for every meal. I don't think he like a carnivorous diet just necessarily means that you only eat steaks. Like, you can eat boiled meat. So I can think you can eat chicken soup. You can eat. I wouldn't be on a meat diet. My God, like, it seems icky. But yeah, I mean, you can eat sausages. You can eat all sorts of things. You can eat fish. But still, like, the idea of not having any vegetable next to your meal, like, you probably don't eat bread. That is horrible. I mean, I definitely wouldn't recommend it to other people. Come visit Poland. I would probably love to visit Poland. I don't speak Polak, though. Do I need to speak Poland to get around, or do they speak English like in Romania? Because in Romania, you can talk with homeless people and they will speak perfect English. I can even be more right-wing if I get some sweet eBay dollars. Man, if I were leftist, I would probably get a lot more money than being right-wing. Unironically. And I would probably make more interesting left-wing arguments than a lot of left-wing creators are making. He only eats beef? Jesus. Yeah, that's something that I wouldn't be able to do, man. We speak English in Poland. Obviously, people in Poland speak English, but are there sufficient people that speak English to the point where I don't get lost if I travel to a city? If I go to a restaurant, can I order in English? That's what I want to know. Animal metabolism, as humans are, include both zero carbs or 100% carbs. They both work for energy creation. It just takes about a month to shift it. Well, humans are like pigs in the sense that we're omnivores. So we're actually designed to be able to eat both meat and plants. Fun fact though, that there's actually more animals that are omnivores than I knew. Like, for example, you can get a dog on a vegan diet. It's going to be very unhealthy for the dog. He's going to survive, but he's not going to thrive. By the way, don't do this. I think in a couple of countries, even though you have like dog food that's vegan based now, they make it animal cruelty if you put a carnivorous animal on a vegan diet. which is a good thing. The thing is, like, dogs, unlike humans, like, humans are more like 60-40, 60 vegetarian, 40 on meat. Dogs are actually, I think, 80% meat and 20% vegetables. But it's interesting, you know, like, the more you search, the more you find. Oh, everyone speaks English. Alright. English is a must if you want to get a job in client service in Poland. I might actually visit then. I need to check to see if I need the COVID pass or whatever. Our homeless can barely speak in general. Jesus. Dogs aren't meant to eat a lot of vegetarian. That's true, which is why I said it's like 20% vegetarian, 80% meat. Even the McDonald's employees speak English around here. Yeah, it's the same like in Romania then. Do you know how weird it is, like, for people that only speak English to understand how it's like for other people to speak two languages? Like, I was actually asked by an English person, it's like, so when you think, do you think in Romanian or do you think in English? And I actually had to stop a little bit and go like, I guess it depends. If I think about video games, I think in English. If I think about YouTube, I think in English. If I think what shopping do I need to make for tomorrow, I think in Romanian. But by the way, here's another interesting thing. And this actually blew my mind. Did you know that there's 3 types of people? So you have one group of people that have no imagination. Like, the only thing they have in their head is hearing voices. So they have like the conscience, like they have a narrator in their head. And that's it, right? So this is the first group of people. Very rare. Second group of people, also rare. They can't imagine color. So when they use their imagination, it's black and white. And third group of people are people who imagine themselves with colors. And I was like, is that a thing? And then I realized that I'm in the second group of people. I can imagine things, but they're all black and white. And it's so mind-blowing, like, knowing there are other people who can actually picture a rainbow in their head. It baffles me. Like, how the fuck do you do that? How do you manage to create color? Like, you must be a god or something. Like, can you create a new color? How does that work? Okay, yes, I'm an NPC, I guess. Let me actually, yeah, like, let's do a test. So, in your imagination, do you see color? Let's ask my community. No, I can't picture color, I'm telling you. It is the same with dreams. What's also interesting is that blind people who never seen anything in their entire life, when they dream, they only hear sounds and smells. I mean, that makes sense if you think about it. Look, see? Already 2% of people. Like, it's a very small minority, by the way, of people like me. I guess we're defective. And like, of course you imagine color. Duh, you fucking ableist woman. You're going to call yourself normal next, huh? You're going to stigmatize me. And the other 8% in the chat. Look how evil she is. I'm already oppressed by the color ableists. No, I can't, Kelly. If I think of the buttons on the Xbox controller, I see them black and white. What exactly don't you understand? If I imagine a lifeguard vest, it's black and white. Jesus. It's like, no, seriously, it's like having a black and white TV and people are saying, can you dial the colors a little bit up? It doesn't work that way. It's like going to a person that can't see the difference between red and blue and you're trying to explain it to them. It's like, no, it's just... Well, yeah, I talked about the third category, people with aphantasia, and these are people who literally cannot imagine anything at all. So they can only hear voices in their head, right? So they hear a narration in their head, but that's it. They cannot. And by the way, I was speaking with one of these people, and they actually said that it feels that people with an imagination are like a god. Like, what do you mean you can will thing into existence? Like, how can you do that? Like, what is that sorcery? But yeah, like, there are people who literally cannot imagine things. Like, they do not have the ability to imagine a tree or something. No wonder I can't drive. What the fuck does seeing color have to do with driving? I never understand that. It's like, even when you have a stop, like a red light and a green light, the red light is up, the green light is down. Like, why do you need to see the color? Yes, I'm focusing more on the objects than the color. Yes. I think if I struggle, like, really, really hard, but even then, like, I just get, like, a glimpse, like, a shape, like, I know what the color should be. But no, like, I just focus on the shape of the object. Okay, make a new poll with all the 3 alternatives. Alright, fine, I'll do it properly. So, let's try it again. You can't hone your imagination, Kelly. It's like saying you have a black and white television and you're like, can you hone the colors on it? It doesn't work. It's not a psychological thing. It's just like you're born that way. Like, since a young lad, I did not imagine colors. Jesus, 13% can't imagine objects at all? It's a lot higher than I thought. Just Green V. Now we have to address dream equity in your color normative. Yeah, but when I dream, I also don't dream color. Let me actually show you this. Like, people don't believe it. They think that I'm lying. All right, look. Blind in the mind. Why some people can't see pictures in their imagination. Imagine an apple floating in front of you. Now see if you can rotate it around in your mind. Does it have any blemishes? How clearly can you see it? Some people see the apple perfectly, like watching a movie. I can't do this, by the way. I can't see it perfectly. I see like a shape. Like, I kind of imagine, but it's not 100% perfect. Others have a very poor wavering image. This is me. Very poor wavering image. Although it might be hard to believe, a small proportion of otherwise healthy people report having no visual experience at all. So some people can't even imagine the apple. In other words, their minds are completely blind. No matter how hard they try, they don't seem to see the apple. And such individuals are often started to find that people are not speaking in metaphors when they say, I pictured it in my mind's eye. This phenomenon of mind blindness has only recently been given a proper name: congenital aphantasia. Mind blow. One of the creators of Firefox realized that the experience of visual imagery was vastly different from most people when he read about a man who lost his ability to imagine after a surgery. See, I got brain damage. That's why I can't imagine it properly. Let me see if I can find... All right. Yeah, this is a chart of different people, right? So when you imagine, it differentiates between like the type of person. So like I think I'm number 3. Okay? But there are people who actually see the apple clearly, like 100% clear visual. There are people who see color, but they don't see the object as defined. And then there are people like me who don't even see the object 100% clearly, but don't see the color properly. Then there's people that only see like a very, how should I say, a very basic thing of the object, enough to understand what it's about. And then there's people who literally can't see anything. Like they just can't use their imagination. I don't know how these people masturbate, to be honest. Like, it must be so sad. It's probably why like some people only masturbate if they see porn. Cause like they need the visual, like they can't do it in their mind. They just, that is like the most sad thing, isn't it? If you can imagine one, you can imagine 1 to 5, yes. I even have involuntary visions where some imagination takes over my mind and I am forced to see something very vivid in the mind, almost like a speech bubble. It's in color. Okay, that would probably suck. But what you're describing are hallucinations. And believe it or not, like hallucinations are a lot more common than people think. And they're not all pathological. So a hallucination becomes pathological when it interferes with your day-to-day life. But you can have auditory hallucinations as well. So for example, there are people who can walk on the street and hear that someone calls their name and they turn around and there's no one there, right? So you imagine that you heard something. Or you can be in house and you can imagine that you heard a knock on the door. And this can happen very rarely, like once a year or once every 6 months, right? And these are actually normal. Like they happen to so many people that it's not pathological. It doesn't interfere with your life. They're not a warning sign of anything. The only problem is like if you start hearing voices constantly, then it's a problem. Ben Shapiro needs visual stimulation. Today I learned that people can't imagine shit at all. See, this is why you come to my channel, so you can learn great things. You can't train, I mean, okay, you can try to train your imagination, but I don't think it works. I don't think it's, I mean, no matter how much I try, I can't do it, right? I mean, I don't even have a basis to start from. I just can't imagine a color, period. There's nothing I can do. No, I haven't heard about exploding head syndrome. Jesus, that sounds dramatic. You can imagine feelings even without pictures. Yes, that's true. So the people who can't imagine anything, they can hear, a voice in their head, so they can read a book without having to read out loud because they have the inner voice. They can imagine feelings, so they can imagine, feeling happy or sad or whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Also, what I think it's interesting is that probably animals are the same. Like, there's probably animals who can't have an imagination. Psychedelics can help. Jesus, just stay away from me, people. Just try and imagine pictures and stuff. Yeah, I can imagine pictures, but they're black and white. Anyway, right. By the way, if you can't imagine color, can you be a racist in your mind? Kelly, okay, Kelly, I have a question. So if I can't imagine color, can I be racist in my imagination? Because I like literally, I can't see color, Kelly. I can't imagine color, so. This is an exploding head syndrome. All right, let me see what you got. I can't access the thing. It says, oops, something went wrong, broken link. Send it to me on Twitter. You need language to imagine stuff, so animals can't imagine shit. No, I don't think you need language to imagine stuff, man. For example, I can imagine being in a train. I don't need language for that. Like I can imagine how I'm going to eat some ramen noodles. And I don't, like, everything is quiet. It's just me eating ramen noodles, so. Yeah. Anyway, I think my wife is home, so I'm going to stop the stream. Thank you guys for watching this. This topic is too interesting for me to allow myself to dumb it down this much. Alright, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for the